Kaimere is a distant planet. It is defined by waves of life brought from Earth and set free to evolve independently in this new context. The indigenous life of the planet, swarms of microbes called magic by the people who live there, are what harvest Earth organisms and make copies on Kaimere. As the asteroid which concluded the Mesozoic never struck Kaimere, dinosaurs remain the dominant terrestrial megafauna. 1.5 million years ago, the great planet of Kaimere's axial tilt changed, leveling so the sun was constantly at the equator. While this made the tropics warmer, the temperate regions became quite cold as seasons became less extreme and wind and water currents were altered. Sea levels reduced. Much of the known world, especially its southern range, was now much colder than it had been during the anchored period, a golden age of ecological stability. This change in climate was the catalyst for a series of extinctions. The anchored period was over, and a new harvest was triggered to repopulate this struggling world. While some fauna were harvested from East Asia and later Sahul, the most important region from which the defining fauna of the following era evolved was the island of Hiya, which in recent history was known as the He-Yi archipelago of the southern Pacific. At the time of Kaimeran harvest, 1.5 million years ago, sea levels on Earth were lower, and there were fewer larger islands rather than the scattered archipelago, as it was just prior to its destruction by American bomb testing in the 1950s. This island chain is famous for the clade of endemic fauna described in the manuscript The Snouters, Form and Life of the Rhinogrades. These shrew-like animals are diagnosed by their nasorium, a flexible and strong nasal extension adapted for a wide range of tasks depending on the clade, though mostly for walking. This is the root of both their scientific name of Rhinogradentia, Latin for nosewalkers, and their common name, the Snouters. The Snouters were only found on these islands. They are a textbook example of insular endemism, wherein animals isolated on islands will diversify in adaptive radiations that could not take place on the mainland due to having minimal competition in these isolated habitats. There are other clades endemic to the islands, but the Snouters were the least precedented and certainly the most interesting. Having a nasorium for locomotion freed up their front limbs for grasping and manipulating food, while their back limbs are often vestigial or lost altogether for most derived species. Most Snouters use their diagnostic nasorium for walking, although prey capture, fishing, camouflage, and even launching and steering in volant species. This appendage is made of tissue that can be hard or soft depending on pressure, much like the human Many species make a hissing sound as they walk, thanks to the nostrils connected to their sinuses constantly filling or exhaling. There are two major clades, the monorhina, which have a single node of their nasorium, and the more derived polyrhina, which possess between 4 and 6 nasal appendages. Both clades have representatives in Kaimere. Arvel is the continent with the most abundant rhinogrades. The Coloptron is a species of monorhinian primitive snouter. Like their Earth counterpart, they are slow walkers on all fours and prop up on their nasorium to feed. They are insectivores, meandering through the forest floors of Titan gardens in search of prey. A thick mucus helps secure their snout to the ground while they eat. Most abundant is the Notoru, or garden snout leaper, found throughout most of Arvel and Nikar. Hopsorhinus is their genus, with several distinct species throughout their range. As true snout leapers, they launch backwards, fast and swift, able to catch insect prey in the air. They live in large groups, scampering about quickly on the forest floors of Titan gardens, generally preferring these open forests where their leaping locomotion is best put to use. The Hausie snout leaper is a 5th species, and they are known to hunt in massive, if uncoordinated, groups in the thousands. The polyrhinans also have known world representatives. Upskrat are found in the Arvel of Highlands. They travel swiftly on their 4-digit noses. They are a common sight in the temperate Arvelith villages looking for scraps. The largest of the Chimeran snouters is the woolly snouter. They are the only grass specialists of this clade. They walk on 4 columnar nizoria, with their 2 narrow and more manipulative stalks able to grasp foliage and bring it to their mouths. They are often compared to mammoths, which share their habitat. Woolly snouters are massive for their clade, with the largest males occasionally reaching 2 meters in height, but they are still vulnerable to the many predators in this environment. Snouters are not among the iconic giants of Kaimere, but theirs is a testament to the adaptive endurance of animals throughout the history of our world. Cheers to Glarn for sponsoring this episode. As you might have guessed, the Snouters are not real on Earth, and indeed not canon in Kaimere. This episode was part of a long and proud history of Snouters being zoology's greatest hoax. I'm certainly not the first to use them as part of an April Fool's prank. In 2012, the National Museum of Natural History in Paris announced the discovery of a new snouter species. The original text, The Snouters, Form and Life of the Rhinogrades, under the pen name Harold Stumke, was written in professional academic prose, yet is openly a dry, humorous text by the late Dr. Gerolf Steiner. Well intended and good humor, The Snouters is actually a pretty useful tool in education, using analogs to educate a wide range of natural history, phylogeny, insular endemism, and animal behavior. The specifics are all fictional, but in broad strokes it is a comprehensive overview of many fundamental topics and phenomena in the natural world. As their story ends with the apocalyptic bombing of their island home, it is also a sobering reminder of the indifferent devastation humans can inflict upon our world. Despite this, the text is engaging and entertaining, and it is no surprise it remains a popular subject of prank and parody in speculative biology and zoology as a whole. The harvest I joked these snouters came from will get genuine coverage on April 16th, so keep an eye out for that if you want to know more about the fauna of mainland Asia taken at this time. There won't be a regular Tuesday episode this week, but next week we will dive into a far more serious topic: man-eaters of Kaimere. Thanks again to Glarn for this opportunity, to my Patreon patrons for your support, and to you for watching. Happy April Fool's Day. Treat yourself to some lighthearted pranks and trickery. Cheers, folks!